Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai. Today we're reading from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 17. The Lord travels to Vrindavan. Texts 185 and 186 is a follow-up verse which connects to 185, so I'll read that one also. Dharma samstapana hetu sadhurya vyavahara puri gosaniraye archana se dharma sara. A devotee's behavior establishes the true principles of religious principles. The behavior of Madhavendra Puri Goswami is the essence of such religious principles. Then text 186. Tako pratishta shrutayo vibhina nasa vrishiryasya matam nabinam dharmasya tadvam nihitam guhayam Mahajano yena kata sapanta. That one would be good to do. Wow. Yeah, I'll do it together. Tako pratishta shruteyo vibhina nasa vrishiryasya matam baninam dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam Mahajano yena gata sapanta. Tako pratishta shrutayo vibhina nasa vrisiryasya matam baninam Dharmasya tattvam nitham guhayam Mahajano yena gata sapanta. Tarka, dry argument. Pratishta, not fixed. Shrutaya, Vedas. Vibhina, possessing different departments. Not. Aso, that. Rishi, great sage. Yasya, whose. Matam, opinion. Not. Binam, separate. Dharmasya, of religious principles. Tattvam, truth. Nihitam, placed. Guhayam, in the heart of a realized person. Mahajana, self-realized predecessors. Yena, by which way? Gata, acted. Saha, that. Pantaha, the pure unadulterated path. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, dry arguments are inconclusive. A great personality whose opinion does not differ from others is not considered a great sage. Simply by studying the Vedas, which are variegated, one cannot come to the right path by which religious principles are understood. The solid truth of religious principles is hidden in the heart of an unadulterated, self-realized person. Consequently, as the Shastras confirm, one should accept whatever the progressive path the Mahajans advocate. Purport: that verse is spoken by Maharaj Yudhisthira in the Mahabharata, Vanaparva 3:13-117. So there's a lengthy purport to this verse that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke, not the one we just spoke, but the prior one. A devotee's behavior establishes the true religious principles. The behavior of Madhavendra Puri Goswami is the essence of such religious principles. So in order to create a context so that the purport is more clear, I'll explain a little bit about it. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyanandana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Gena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. This verse is called The Lord Travels to Vrindavan, which is a setup for the next chapter, The Lord Visits Vrindavan. So this chapter has described Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's leaving Jagannath Puri and walking to Vrindavan, or Mathura, to be more specific. Arriving in Mathura, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he bathed in the Vishram Ghat, he bathed in the Jamuna River, and then he went nearby to Krishna Janmastan, where there's a big Keshava temple. And while he was there, finally in Mathura, looking at the deity of Keshava, he began to dance and chant in ecstasy. And everybody in the temple was kind of wondering what kind of behavior that was, because it wasn't the normal behavior of people prior to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to do that. But one man in that assembly came up and started dancing with him. And they were hugging each other and they were rolling together and they were in ecstatic love and they just chanted and danced for some time. And then that slowly abated. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took that man aside and spoke with him and said, where have you gotten this? How did you know what this was? He was an elderly Brahmin. And that man explained that when I was a young man, there was a great saintly person who came here to Mathura named Madhavendra Puri. And he established the deity of Govardhan, Srinathji, Gopal, on top of Govardhan Hill. And at that time, he was still being worshipped there. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard about that person's connection to Madhavendra Puri, then he became very pleased. And Balabhadra Bhattacharya, who was traveling with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as his servant, explained to that Brahmin Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's connection to Madhavendra Puri. So their bond was in that ecstatic love mood that Madhavendra Puri had brought to this world and was then starting to snowball and roll and expand with the advent of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That Brahmin was, as we've heard the last few weeks, not from a very high-class Brahminical caste. And 500 years ago in India, the caste system was extremely orthodox. If you've ever come across an orthodox religious follower, there's no wiggle room. Orthodox means it's extremely strict. It's not reformed, it's not modern, it's not adapted. It's strictly according to the rules and the regulations and the scriptures. So we'll pick up and go back just a little bit here to what happened when that Brahmin invited Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his home. That Brahmin then took Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his home and out of his own free will began to serve the Lord in various ways. He asked Balabhadra Bhattacharya to cook Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lunch. At that time, the Lord smilingly spoke as follows. This etiquette of having a Brahmin travel with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very important for Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Ramananda Roy before the Lord even left Jagannath Puri. They wanted somebody to travel with him for this very reason. A Brahmin has to cook for someone, not just anyone. If he was going to travel all alone, all the way from Jagannath Puri to Vrindavan, he would come across so many places and times when he had no facility to eat. So what was he to do? But if he had a Brahmin with him, that Brahmin would cook. And generally what happened was that not knowing the different castes and type of people and following very closely the orthodoxy of the time in the caste system, the people would give Balabhadra Bhattacharya raw ingredients. And then Balabhadra Bhattacharya would cook for the Lord. So this was the standard etiquette when accepting a guest. Rather than cooking yourself and offering the food to that person, they would take the raw ingredients and they give them to the Brahmin cook. So he did that, but then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu smilingly spoke as follows. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Madhavendra Puri has already taken lunch at your place. Therefore you may cook and give me the food. That is my instruction. And he quoted Bhagavad Gita. Yad yad acharti shreshtas tad eva taro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokos tanunavartate. Whatever action is performed by a great man, common men follow. And whatever standard he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. That Brahmin belonged to the Sanodiya Brahmin community, and a sannyasi does not accept food from such a Brahmin. Again, back to the orthodox concept of the caste system. And we heard a few weeks ago that the Sanodiya Brahmins were a caste of Brahmins specifically in Western India, means Gujarat, Agarwals and Karwals, that the Brahmins served that Vaishya community, or were the leaders of that community. But the Vaishyas in that particular caste are also not of the highest grade. And they drink wine and they have some lower habits. So, therefore, the Sanodiya Brahmins who administer to those Vaishyas and Kshatriyas are also considered lower caste. And therefore, a sannyasi would not eat from that person's hand. Although the Brahmin belonged to the Sanodiya Brahmin community, Srila Madhavendra Puri saw that he behaved like a Vaishnava and therefore accepted him as his disciple. The food he cooked was also accepted by Madhavendra Puri. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu willingly requested food from that Brahmin, and the Brahmin, feeling natural humility, began to speak as follows. It is a great fortune for me to offer you food. You are the Supreme Lord, and being in the transcendental position, you are not restricted in any way. Foolish people will blaspheme you, but I shall not tolerate the words of such mischievous persons. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, the Vedas, Puranas, and great learned sages are not always in agreement with one another. Consequently, there are different religious principles. And then the verse for today. A devotee's behavior establishes the true purpose of religious principles. The behavior of Madhavendra Puri Goswami is the essence of such religious principles. So the concept is that although the Vedas are there with the many rules and regulations, so many stories, even in our society, there are differences of opinion about different topics, even though we all follow the same acharya, the same siddhanta, the same parts of the Veda that are accepted by us. So what to speak of society where, in general, where specific aspects of the Vedas, Shri Upanishad, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita. These are our basic foundation of philosophy. But other sampradayas, other followers of Vedanta, don't follow those same shastras. So they have different rules, different regulations, different rituals, different forms of worship, and it's all bona fide. If you go to Sri Rangam, they don't have Gauni Thai in the deity, in the temple. If you go to Madhvacharya's temple in Udupi, they don't have Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda in their temple. But we're part of their sampradaya. So there are different religious principles according to a culture, time, place, circumstances, people. And what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is emphasizing here is that he accepts Madhavendra Puri. And because Madhavendra Puri accepted this man's cooking and accepted him as his disciple, therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is willing to do so. Srila Prabhupada had a great mountain to climb regarding this, and bringing Westerners to this, at that time, rather orthodox culture in India, especially Vrindavan, and preaching this over the years, people have come to see the sincerity of some devotees and appreciate that there are sincere devotees who are qualified Brahmins, whose food they can accept. I was the temple commander in Vrindavan in 1978, the year after Prabhupada left. And even though we would invite different Goswamis from the different temples of Vrindavan, and they all accepted us as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they would not eat the food at Krishna Balaram temple. We had to make a fruit plate and give them that, because that was the standard at the time. So, this purport again is rather lengthy, but it describes why this principle of accepting the devotee's etiquette as the example that is supported by the Vedas and supports the Vedas. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, and he explains, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gives the following commentary on this passage. A sadhu, or an honest man, is called a Mahajan, or Mahatma. The word Mahajan, sometimes we think it's some kind of a special designation, but the word actually doesn't mean anything like that. Maha, of course, means great, and Jana means person. So it's just a great person, a person who is considered great, a person to follow. But this description and definition of a Mahajan zeroes in and focuses more detailedly who is a qualified Mahajan. The Mahatma is described in the Bhagavad Gita. Mahatmanas tumam partha daivam prakritim ashritaha bhajanti ananya manaso gyantva bhuritam avyayam. O son of Prita, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. Bhagavad Gita 9:13. In the material world, the Mahatma is understood in different ways by different religionists. Mundaners also come up with their different angles of vision. For the conditioned soul, busy in sense gratification, a Mahajan, or a great person, is recognized according to the proportion of sense gratification he offers. For instance, a businessman may consider a certain banker to be a Mahajan, and karmis desiring material enjoyment may consider philosophers like Jaimini to be a Mahajan. There are many yogis who want to control the senses, and for them, Patanjali Rishi is a Mahajan. For the Gyanis, atheists like Kapila, Vashishta, Durvasa, Dattatreya, and many other impersonalist philosophers are Mahajans. For the demons, Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakasipu, Ravana, Ravana's son Meghananda, Jarasandha, and others are accepted as Mahajans. For materialistic anthropologists speculating on the evolution of the body, a person like Darwin is a Mahajan. The scientists who are bewildered by Krishna's external energy have no relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yet they are accepted by some as Mahajans. Similarly, philosophers, historians, literary men, public speakers, and social and political leaders are sometimes accepted as Mahajans. Such Mahajans are respected by certain men who have been described in the Bhagavatam 2:13-19, Svavidvara hostra karai samstuta pusha nayat karna patopeto jatu nama gadagraja. Men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna, the deliverer from evils. There's a fantastic lecture by Srila Prabhupada, 1972, Los Angeles, where he describes why these people in particular praise those. It says here, the verse is, men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses praise those, talking about the people that we read about in the previous paragraph. Look at YouTube. Look at the views and see who's popular. What kind of people are being listened to by the masses? Look at any headline of any newsreel. Watch any television news program and see whose face, who's being put up there as an example of either who to follow or not follow, depending on the opinion of the news person. But you can see that although this information, Srimad Bhagavatam, transcendental information, is readily available in modern day by anybody's fingertips, people are not listening. So these Mahajans, this purport is extremely pertinent. It's relevant because it's describing even a few years ago, we had this group called the Blind Uncle's Band that used to play at Thanksgiving. And they did one song called Seminars, because at that time, this community, people were searching for economic development and ways to kind of, we're in the boonies, so finding a way to maintain the family wasn't so easy, and so many different groups and opportunities and seminars, and then maybe a little bit different way to cleanse your heart might be good. And so many people were into, it kind of became a thing for the seminars. So the people giving the seminars were considered worthy of listening to. That's what this purport's talking about. So dogs have a nature that they're loyal, but they need a master. It's the nature of a dog. It needs a master. So there is a certain class of people, especially in Kali Yuga, a vast majority of people who are by nature Sudras. They need to have a master at the job. Now in United States of America, with the idea of socialism becoming very strong, where the government takes care of me. All I have to do is follow what they say. It's a mentality of a dog that goes to work and works for somebody else. That person is running the business, but all I have to do is my little job and I'll be taken care of. So that's a dog. The hog eats anything. And we can see that although these people know it's not good for their health, it's proven. Every doctor on earth has prescribed that you should watch your diet. But yet there's a class of people who really don't care. They can't do that. They eat food that's horrible. So they're like hogs. Dogs, hogs, camels. The example of the camel is that camels are desert animals, and there's not a lot of green grass in the desert. So they'll walk around and eat just about anything to try and maintain themselves, and sometimes there are thorny bushes in the desert. So they chew that shrubbery, thinking that it's tasty, when in actuality the thorns are cutting their tongues and they're tasting their own blood. And that's the example of the person who's really into sex life and enjoying life and having sex regularly, thinking that that's enjoyment. Dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. Asses, we used to see them all the time in India. The most famous one is the laundryman. The laundryman, the dhobi, he packs that animal up on both sides with these huge cloths that hold every other cloth, and the little animal walks along and it can barely move. And on both sides of it, there's grass as he walks down the road. But when he gets to the river and the dhobi takes off all the cloth and starts to wash, he gives the animal some grass, and the animal sits there eating the grass, and he's satisfied that he got a meal for his endeavor. So people who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses praise others who supply that type of necessity or interact with them in such a way that pleases that part of them. And this lecture by Prabhupada is extremely graphic and beautiful, where he describes all these things. Thus, on the material platform, animalistic leaders are worshipped by animals. Sometimes physicians, psychiatrists, and social workers try to mitigate the bodily pain, distress, or fear, but they have no knowledge of the spiritual identity and are bereft of a relationship with God. Yet they are considered Mahajans by the illusioned. Self-deceived persons sometimes accept leaders or spiritual masters from a priestly order that has been officially appointed by the codes of a materialistic life. In this way, they are deceived by official priests. Some people accept a Mahajan as Mahajan, those who have been designated by Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur as Danga Vipras, impostor Brahmins. Such impostors imitate the characteristics of Haridas Thakur, and they envy Haridas Thakur, who was certainly a Mahajan. They make great artificial endeavors, advertising themselves as great devotees of the Lord, or as mystic hypnotists, knowledgeable in witchcraft, hypnotism, and miracles. If you lived in Bengal, this is not some kind of a show that people put on like in America when we hear about a magician or a hypnotist. You think of somebody who's putting on a show. These people live in the village, and they actually do worship to attain tantric powers so that they can influence people in different ways. And some people follow them. Sometimes people accept demons, like Putana, Trinavarta, Vatsa, Baka, Agasura, and Denuka, Kaliya, and Pralamba. Some people accept imitators and advertisers and adversaries of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such as Pondraka. When Pondraka showed up on the battlefield, remember he was the one who tied the other arms on him? What did he have with him? An army. That means he had followers. Shringala Vyasudev, the spiritual master of the demons, Sukracharya, or atheists like Charvaka, King Vena, Sugata, and Arhat. Such people have no faith in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, they accept godless cheaters who present themselves as incarnations of God and cheat foolish people within the material world by word jugglery. Thus, many rascals are accepted as Mahajans. In this material world, a person may be famous as a karma vira, a successful fruitive worker, or one may be very successful in performing religious duties, or he may be known as a hero in mental speculation, a Jnanavira, or he may be a very famous renunciate. In any case, Srimad Bhagavatam 3:23-56 gives the following opinion in this matter. Neha yat karma dharmaya na vairagaya kalpate na tirtha parasevayai jivan api mrito hisa. Anyone whose work is not meant to elevate him to religious life, anyone whose religious, ritualistic performances do not raise him to renunciation, and anyone situated in renunciation that does not lead him to devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, must be considered dead, although he is breathing. The conclusion is that all pious activity, fruitive activity, religious principles, and renunciation must ultimately lead to devotional service. There are different types of processes for rendering service. One may serve his country, people, society, the varnashram dharma, the sick, the poor, the rich, women, demigods, and so on. All this comes under the heading of sense gratification, or enjoyment in the material world. It is most unfortunate that these people are more or less attracted by such material activity, and that the leaders of these activities are accepted as Mahajans, great ideal leaders. Actually, they are only misleaders, but an ordinary man cannot understand how he is being misled. Narottam Das Thakur says, Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya Chitite Koriya Aikya. A sadhu is a great personality like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Shastras are the injunctions of the revealed scriptures. Those who are devoid of devotional service sometimes mistake those who have mundane motives for Mahajans. The only motive must be Krishna Bhakti, devotional service to the Lord. Sometimes fruitive workers, dry philosophers, non-devotees, mystic yogis, and persons attached to material opulence, women, and money are considered Mahajans. However, Srimad Bhagavatam 6.3.25 gives the following statements about such unauthorized Mahajans. Prayena Veda Taridam Mahajano Yam Devya Vimohita Matir Bhatamala Ayalam Trayan Jati Krida Matir Madhu Pushpatayam Vatinike Mahati Karmani Yujamana. In this material world, fruitive actors are accepted as Mahajans by foolish people who do not know the value of devotional service. Have you ever watched any of those motivational speakers? They get huge numbers of people. They get thousands of dollars from each person in the crowd to go to the seminar for the weekend. And what is the actual intention? To come up with, to be enthused and encouraged to really make good money is pretty much the basic concept for most of them. How you can get the most out, how you can be the best you can be by entering into this realm of making money, and making the money, the reciprocation that you get, the amount of money you make, is actually a barometer that reveals the quality of your actions and subsequently the quality of your value to everyone. And ultimately, your value as a person comes down to how much money you're making. A lot of people have this concept, and those who aren't making the money in such an environment become depressed that they're not on the top rungs of this ladder. They feel weak, self-pity, and don't think that they're very good people because they're not that. The whole society pressures them like that. Consequently, they cannot understand unalloyed devotional service. They are attached to material activities, and they become worshippers of material nature. Thus, they are known as fruitive actors. They even become entangled in material activities disguised as spiritual activities. In the Bhagavad Gita, these people are described as Veda Vata Rata. They do not understand the real purpose of the Vedas, yet they think themselves as Vedic authorities. People versed in Vedic knowledge must know Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedaischa savarama eva vedya. Bhagavad Gita 15:15. A man covered by illusion cannot understand the proper way. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in this verse that we're studying today, Dharma stapana hetu sadurya vyavahara. The behavior of a devotee is the criteria for all other behavior. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself followed the devotional principles and taught others to follow them. Puri gosanire ye archana se dharmasara. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally followed the behavior of Madhavendra Puri and advised others to follow his principles. One of the examples of Vedic culture that I've always appreciated, even when compared to Gaudiya Math or ISKCON, is the Sampradaya of the Sri Sampradaya and the Madhvacharya Sampradaya, the Madhva Sampradaya in Udupi. Madhvacharya and Ramanujacharya lived 800 years ago and 1,000 years ago, respectively. 1,000 years ago, Ramanujacharya lived, and he wrote a bhashya. He wrote a commentary, wrote commentaries on different shastras. Similarly, Madhvacharya wrote shastra, wrote commentaries. He wrote his bhashyas. For 1,000 years, his followers still read that bhashya as their main siddhanta. Everyone subsequently may have written commentaries or adjustments to his commentary, but this way, the truth, as revealed by that teacher, has been followed and passed down. And this is the principle that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is setting here. It's the same thing. Madhavendra Puri set this standard, therefore I follow it. And that's how he's not, in one sense, he's established himself by his own example and his nature as God, the personality of Godhead, as the founder of the Sampradaya, but in another sense, he's not. He's part of a Sampradaya, which is much bigger and longer and goes back in history to the beginning of time when Lord Brahma was instructed by Krishna. Unfortunately, people have been attracted to the material body since time immemorial. Yasyatma buddhi kunapetritadike swadikalatadrishu boma ijidi yat tirtha buddhi salileda karichit janeshu abhigneshu sa eva gokara. A human being who identifies this body made of 3 elements with his self, who considers the byproducts of the body to be his kinsmen, who considers the land of his birth worshipable, and who goes to the place of a pilgrimage simply to take a bath, rather than to meet men of transcendental knowledge there, is to be considered like an ass or a cow. Srimad Bhagavatam 1084:13. Those who accept the logic of Gaditika Pravaha and who follow the footsteps of pseudo Mahajans are carried away by the waves of Maya. Bhaktivinoda Thakur therefore warns, Michir Maya Rasi Hyacha Beshi Kacha Habudububai Jeev Krishna Das Evasvas Kolo To Oduko Nai. Don't be carried away by these waves of Maya. Just surrender into the lotus feet of Krishna and all miseries will end. Those who follow social customs and behavior forget to follow the path chalked out by Mahajans. Thus they are offenders at the feet of the Mahajans. Sometimes they consider such Mahajans very conservative, or they create their own Mahajans. In this way, they ignore the principles of our parampara system. This is a great misfortune for everyone. If one does not follow in the footsteps of the real Mahajans, one's plans for happiness will be frustrated. It's also interesting, as I'm reading this, to see how Srila Prabhupada, he came from a culture, imagine Srila Prabhupada being brought up in India, in a Vaishnava family, of course surrounding him were the Muslim neighbors, and life in Calcutta. Then he moves to Vrindavan and Allahabad, and he had his business. So he was obviously aware, but the basic life of India at that time, just after their independence, was more or less Vedic. Then he gets on a ship, and he lands in New York, or Butler, Pennsylvania, and then New York. And how expert he had to be to see the people, understand what they could accept and what they couldn't, make a bottom line for them to follow, and then try to elevate everybody above that bar. This is what's being described here. He wasn't just some orthodox entity or follower of the Vedas who landed and said, these are the rules and regulations of the scriptures, and you have to follow them like this. He was practical. So there's these gray areas where things aren't to be followed exactly as they're stated, yet you can't push the bar too far over, or you're entering into a being covered by illusion realm. So the study of Srila Prabhupada's lectures, his letters, the way he taught management, and his books create an entire body of information. And then within that, there's even differences of opinion. This is elaborately explained in the Madhya Lila, chapter 25, verse 55, 60, 56, and 58. Paramakarama isvara keha nahi mane, swaswamate stapane paramatera kandane. Tate chaya darshana hoite tattva nahi jani, mahajane ye kahe, se satyamani. Sri Krishna Chaitanya vani, amriteradar, tinho ye kahahe vastu, se tattvasar. People are so unfortunate that they do not accept the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Instead, they want to be supported by so-called Mahajan authorities. Tate chaya darshana hoite tattva nahi jani. We cannot ascertain the real truth simply by following speculations. Why can't we just read the Vedas and understand it? The Vedas have so much information, some of it's transcendental, and some of it isn't. If it's transcendental information means, by definition, that it's not part of this material world. But yet all conditioned souls, every single one of them, from Brahma down to the ant, only has material instruments to try and acquire transcendental knowledge. So the only way they can do it is to accept it when it comes from the transcendental world through the parampara. That's what's being described here, that they're accepting other Mahajans, other examples of what's to be done with my life. But the Mahajans actually, the parampara, the members of a parampara, only follow the previous acharyas, who ultimately follow Krishna. Krishna instructed Brahma, Narada, Narada Vyas, etc. We have to follow in the footsteps of the Mahajans in disciplic succession. Then our attempt will be successful. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Vani Amritaradar. Whatever is spoken by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an incessant flow of nectar. Whoever accepts his words as reality can understand the essence of the absolute truth. No one can ascertain the absolute truth by following the philosophy of Sankhya, or Patanjali, or followers of Sankhya and Patanjali, who do not accept Lord Vishnu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nate vidu svarta gatimhi Vishnum. The ambition of such people is never fulfilled. Therefore, they are attracted by the external energy. Although mental speculators may be renowned all over the world as great authorities, actually they are not. Such leaders are themselves conservative and not at all liberal. However, if we preach this philosophy, people will consider Vaishnavas very sectarian. Srila Madhavendra Puri was a real Mahajan, but misguided people cannot distinguish the real form from the unreal. Madhavendra Puri installed the deity on Govardhan, but yet he accepted, and then he had the different Brahmins come and worship that deity. But yet he accepted this particular Sanodiya Brahmin as his disciple and one of those Brahmins. So he's showing by that example that it's not just conservative or orthodox. A person who is awakened to Krishna consciousness can understand the real religious path chalked out by the Lord and his pure devotees. Sri Madhavendra Puri was a real Mahajan because he understood the absolute truth properly and throughout his life behaved like a pure devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu approved the method of Sri Madhavendra Puri. Therefore, although from the material point of view, the Sanodiya Brahmin was on a lower platform, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu considered him situated on the highest platform of spiritual realization. Srimad Bhagavatam 6.3.20 states that there are 12 Mahajans: Brahma, Narada, Shambhu, Kumara, Kapila, Manu, Prahlad, Janaka, Bhishma, Bali, Sukadev, and Yamaraj. To select our Mahajans in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, we have to follow in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his representatives. His next representative is Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami. And the next are the 6 Goswamis: Sri Rupa, Sri Sanatan, Bhatta Raghunath, Sri Jiva, Gopal Bhatta, and Dasa Raghunath. The follower of Vishnu Swami was Sridhar Swami, the most well-known commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam. He was also a Mahajan. Similarly, Chandidas, Vidyapati, and Jayadev were all Mahajans. One who tries to imitate the Mahajans, just to become an imitative spiritual master, is certainly far away from following in the footsteps of the Mahajans. Sometimes people cannot actually understand how a Mahajan follows other Mahajans. In this way, people are inclined to fall from devotional service. I hope that's clear, what's going on in the story, why these verses are being quoted, why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is pointing out his appreciation for Madhavendra Puri. Any questions or comments? Yes, Madhavendra.
So, here we saw the Madhavendra Puri was there and influenced. Yeah, Madhavendra Puri certainly had the influence of this one Brahmana while young, but didn't seem like that was a rarity. It seems like nobody else was doing so, or when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started dancing, everybody was just amazed to see what was going on. So my question is that he didn't bring that out during that time, the whole mood of chanting and dancing?
No. It's described that he planted the seed. He brought the seed of this type of bhakti. We see, even in our own lives, how influences in society take time to develop and manifest. So Madhavendra Puri, when he was in Vrindavan, of course we know the story that Gopal came to him in the dream. The devotees in Anyora, he got them to help him unearth the deity. He established the deity on the top of Govardhan Hill and established the worship of the deity. hired some Brahmins, or made arrangements for the Brahmins to be there. And then it was 2 years that he stayed there. Then he had the dream where Gopal said, I'm still hot. Please go to Puri and get some chandan so that I can cool down. So his influence was more or less plant the seed, establish the deity of Gopal, of Srinathji. He didn't establish this whole kirtan. That was the next phase, which was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Panchatattva. And they started that in Navadvip. And we'll read in the next chapter how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, part of his plan, part of his growth of his movement, was to also reestablish that type of bhakti in the Braj area. At that time, it wasn't at all manifest. Prema bhakti, Radha bhakti, like that had become lost. We'll read about that next chapter. So, no, Madhavendra Puri wasn't his service.
On the same situation, I was thinking, the comment to make was how you're mentioning that, devotees, the local brahmanas did not accept from the other mats, they did not accept prasadam from Krishna Balaram, they just accepted the fruit. And so I guess that was not the time to be, because just maybe a couple of years ago, we were in Vrindavan and at Indradumna Maharaj's retreat. And there was this young man, teenager or saying like maybe early 20s, and he was at the retreat, Indradumna Maharaj's retreat, and talking to him and find out that he comes from mother's side Gopal Bhatt Goswami's lineage, and father's side another lineage or something. And he was and such a scholar, kind of like made me think about Jiva Goswami or something, like talking with him, so scholarly and everything, and such a Brahmin, and he took initiation from Indradumna Maharaj.
Wow.
So how time changes, like when it's time, like you're saying, it was time for Lord Chaitanya to come and him to influence, so that things have changed.
Yes. Jai, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai.